While we drive a car, we look at different signals, different indicators. Then when we talk about economics, we become stupid and we want to have just one single number. This doesn't make any sense.
Welcome to a new episode of Directions, Navigating Beyond GDP Futures, the podcast series that explores the interconnections between economic growth, human flourishing, and sustainability. I am Andrea Ferrannini, researcher in development economics at the University of Florence and manager of the project SPES, funded by the European Union. In this episode, we discuss how to convince policymakers, statistical offices, and citizens to definitely go beyond GDP and embrace a vision of sustainable human development, focusing their efforts on sustainable and inclusive well-being. To delve deeper in these topics, we invited Enrico Giovannini, full professor in economic statistics at the University of Rome Tor Vergata and member of the UN High-Level Expert Group on Beyond GDP. Welcome, Enrico. Thank you for being with us. Before we start, can I ask you to briefly introduce yourself and your previous roles dealing with sustainability and well-being topics?
I'm currently professor at the University of Rome, but I'm the former chief statistician of the OECD between 2001 and 2009, then president of the Italian Statistical Office, 2009-2013, then Minister of Labor, and then again later 2021-2022 Minister for Sustainable Infrastructures and Mobility. And I'm the co-founder and the scientific director of the Italian Alliance for Sustainable Development, which is a network of more than 300 organizations involved in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
Based on your outstanding experience as a scholar and expert, but also as a policymaker for the Italian government and as an activist in the Italian Alliance for Sustainable Development, how would you define sustainable and inclusive well-being?
Sustainable and inclusive well-being is a general definition that has been adopted by several research projects, but also the work that we have done at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. The way in which we developed our framework is quite innovative because we looked at both the current well-being, but also the elements that build the future well-being. But also, of course, inclusiveness, which is a fundamental element of social sustainability. In this perspective, we look at the different forms of capital: natural capital, economic capital, human capital. And then we look at vulnerability and resilience, the capacity of the system to react to shocks, but also institutional capacity. Therefore, we tried not only to make a sum or, let's say, an aggregation of the different domains of well-being, health, work, and so on and so forth, but also this intertemporal dimension.
Thank you very much, Enrico. How would you explain to citizens the importance of such a change in our vision of development and in the main goal of European and national policies?
I normally use what Lord Richard Layard used to say in his conferences. Close your eyes and think about the most relevant three things that you would wish for your beloved people, which is not simply get richer and richer every single day. Health, good relationships, good job, but also quality of environment, and so on and so forth. So what we have done over the last 70 years is to use an approximation of well-being, and GDP worked in a certain sense, but now it doesn't work anymore, both because, of course, beyond a certain level of prosperity, we need to look at other dimensions, but also because currently we reached and we broke already some of the planetary boundaries. Therefore, just maximizing growth can create negative feedback and negative impact on the same GDP. So we cannot assume anymore the hypothesis that we used in the past, just to say, let's increase GDP and everything will be fine. It wasn't true in the past, but it's even less true now.
This is absolutely true, Enrico, and made evident also by the research and policy engagement activities conducted within the SPES project. For instance, we have argued and shown that different pillars of sustainable human development should be considered together, all standing at the same level. In your opinion, why is it so important to look at sustainability from different perspectives?
I think that we have seen that building just on the maximization of growth creates a lot of problems and doesn't ensure the sustainability, neither the environmental sustainability, but also the social sustainability, the economic sustainability, and finally, the institutional sustainability. Therefore, we have to look at simultaneously at different domains. And this is where, of course, there are trade-offs and synergies. Looking at the whole concept helps in identifying possible synergies between economic, social, and environmental policies, but also trade-offs which are absolutely relevant. And policies can change these trade-offs. For example, given the current energy mix, there is no way to have a large increase of GDP or other economic output measures without affecting negatively the environment. While if we change the energy mix, this becomes more possible, not necessarily, let's say, real, but more possible. And this is the reason why the coherence of policies is so important for sustainable development, and doesn't make any sense to try to find such a coherence just looking at one dimension in terms of measurement of well-being.
Thanks, Enrico. On these matters, there is now a long-lasting debate on the importance of rethinking the way we measure progress and development going beyond GDP. The SPES project has shown the richness, but also the abundance of alternatives to go beyond GDP, arguing for stronger consensus between international, European and national bodies and experts. According to your experience, how can we measure different domains of well-being and the different dimensions of sustainability in an integrated way?
We have a lot of data that we didn't have 25 years ago when I started at the OECD working on these issues. Official statistics made a big improvement, and we have data and also timely data for several elements of sustainable and inclusive well-being. Can we just aggregate them in a single figure? No, this would be a mistake because we don't have a single metric. So there are three main ways to go. The first is to rethink the system of national accounts, which has a lot of good things inside, but has been built and is still working around the concept of the amount of production. And today, this is not fit for purpose in the 21st century. Second possibility, build composite indicators. Yes, this could be done, but this cannot be the final solution because we need also to understand what is producing an increase or decrease of the composite indicator. Third element, using dashboards of indicators, but these can be useful for experts, not necessary for the large public. Therefore, we need to build, develop a multiplicity of tools. Let me also add that while we drive a car, we look at different signals, different indicators. Then when we talk about economics, we become stupid and we want to have just one single number. This doesn't make any sense, especially now also with the new capacities of representing graphically the data that we have. So it's a multiple set of tools that we need to develop, but anyway, it's time now to rethink from scratch the system of national accounts.
In line with your argument, in SPES, we explore the importance of public opinions and attitudes on these matters. How can we enhance a supportive role by the media to embrace such a change in the vision and in the metrics, thus shaping a public debate in this direction?
One key element that makes media very careful or capable of transmitting interesting data is timeliness. And we have an asymmetry here because economic data are published very timely, social data arrive later, and the environmental data arrive even late. And this creates a sort of conceptual asymmetry or bias in our mind, as if economy is driving everything. So we need to feed media with data related to the same time span, with the same frequency, and this would help them in seeing the trade-offs. For example, if you publish simultaneously the growth of GDP and the emissions of greenhouse gases, for example, you would immediately understand that if one grows more than the other, there is something wrong or something good. So you immediately start making relationships between the different variables. Finally, we need to train media experts to think in a more integrated way. Showing to them the trade-offs and the synergies, they could build better stories. The current way of proposing to the public just pieces of information completely disconnected, the one from the other.
Thanks. This is fundamental to shape a new narrative and public consensus on these topics. Based on these insights and reflections, what is your key message to European policymakers to go in this direction and to focus resources, efforts and policies towards sustainable and inclusive well-being?
Read Article 3 of the treaty, which talks about the role of the Union, which is to promote peace, well-being and the values of its people. Can GDP capture all these? No. And especially the other text of Article 3 talks about almost all the Sustainable Development Goals. Therefore, the Union has been built to go beyond GDP by design. And it's important that Europe understands and promotes this cultural shift, because otherwise Europe is evaluated, judged on measures that have been decided by someone else. So it's a political issue, especially now in this geopolitical tensions context. It's not a statistical problem.
I absolutely agree with you. To conclude, what is your key message to European citizens to push for their active role in their own societies for sustainable and inclusive well-being?
Read Article 3 of the treaty. I'm not joking. A lot of people don't know exactly what the Union is for. What are the values? And when you consider that you find in Article 3 all the 17 goals of the 2030 Agenda, one can recognize that the UN Agenda for Sustainable Development has been built thanks to Europeans. And this is a great step, and we shouldn't give up, even if other parts of the world think that we should go back or dismiss all these ideas.
Thank you so much, Enrico, for your time and for the great conversation with us. That was Enrico Giovannini sharing his insights on how to go beyond GDP. This episode is part of Directions, a podcast series produced under the framework of the SPES project, Sustainability Performances, Evidence and Scenarios, funded by the Horizon Europe program. The objective of the project is to better understand the interconnections between economic growth, human flourishing and sustainability. The ambition is to equip policymakers with information that will guide their strategies for fostering sustainable and human development, using new evidence about past, present and future performances of the sustainability transition. SPES Scientific Director is Professor Mario Biggeri from the University of Florence, and I am Andrea Ferranini, researcher at the University of Florence. You can read more on the interview and the project on sustainabilityperformances.EU.